You think your life is hard? Try waking up in 14th century Europe. You're a 12-year-old girl and you're told you're a woman now. Not because you feel like one, but because your body just bled. And some man 3 times your age has paid your father 2 goats and a jug of ale for your hand in marriage. This is what it meant to be female in the Middle Ages, and it was a nightmare dressed up as tradition. Stick around because you'll want to hear about Marjorie Backwell, a real woman whose life will make you genuinely grateful you weren't born 700 years ago. Section 1. What life was like for women in the Middle Ages. In the medieval world, women were considered property. Full stop. They belonged to their fathers until they were married off. Then, they belonged to their husbands. There was no legal identity for a woman that wasn't tied to a man. Could you go to school? Not unless you were nobility, and even then, your curriculum was embroidery, prayer, and how to act virtuous. Could you work? Maybe as a maid, laundress, or wet nurse. But those jobs paid in scraps, and dignity was not included. And God help you if you were raped. You wouldn't get justice. You'd get blamed. If you became pregnant outside of marriage, it wasn't called assault. It was called shame. The kind that got you stoned, whipped, or locked away in a convent for life. Medicine? That was for men. Women had folk remedies, most of which involved herbs, prayers, and blind hope. And if you were too good at healing people, you were a witch. Good luck surviving that one. Women were expected to be obedient, pious, silent, and fertile. That was the dream. The reality? You bled, you bore children, you worked until your back broke, and you probably died before you turned 35. And childbirth? That was Russian roulette. There were no anesthetics, no clean tools, no doctors for women. Just midwives and prayer. Section 2. The horrific story of Marjorie Backwell. Now, let's talk about Marjorie Backwell. She was born in 1324 in rural Norfolk, England. Her father was a serf, basically a slave to the local lord. Her mother died giving birth to her 5th child. Marjorie was the 2nd. At age 11, she was sent to work as a servant in the manor house. By 12, she was married off to Thomas Beck, a 38-year-old man who had already buried 2 wives. The marriage wasn't about love. It was about survival. And for Marjorie, it was the beginning of her end. By 13, she was pregnant. By 14, she was in labor for 2 days. The baby was stillborn. No doctor, no help. Just blood, fever, and silence. She gave birth again and again. 8 pregnancies in total. 6 ended in miscarriage or infant death. 1 daughter, Joan, lived to age 5. Then a fever took her. Marjorie never got over it.
Her husband beat her regularly. No one cared. It was legal. When the Black Death hit in 1348, Thomas died. Marjorie survived. And that made her suspicious. People whispered that she consorted with dark forces. Why? Because she lived. That was enough. She was dragged from her home by villagers, accused of witchcraft, and tortured. Her hair was shaved, her body scourged in public, and she was forced to confess under agony. They didn't burn her. That was too quick. Instead, they cast her out, declared her unclean, unwanted, untouchable. She lived her final years in a leper house, alone and destitute, though she never had leprosy. She died at 31. No one marked her grave, but her name survives in one dusty church record. One line, one woman, a lifetime of suffering. Section 3. Widespread oppression, not just one story. Marjorie's life wasn't rare. It was the rule. Medieval Europe was brutal to women across every class. Peasant women broke their backs in the fields and kitchens. Noble women were political pawns, married off to secure alliances they didn't choose. Even queens had no real freedom. Look at Eleanor of Aquitaine, one of the most powerful women of the time. still imprisoned by her husband for over a decade for daring to speak her mind. Women were often accused of being inherently sinful, descendants of Eve, the first sinner. The church preached that pain in childbirth was divine punishment. Female pleasure, a myth. Female autonomy, heresy. And for those labeled witches, often older women, widows, healers, or just outspoken souls, the punishments were horrific. Hanging, burning, drowning, all in the name of saving their souls. It wasn't about justice, it was about control. So the next time someone says, "I wish I lived in medieval times," ask them, as who? Because unless you were a king and a man, those days weren't some fantasy. They were a nightmare. Especially if you were born a woman. Marjorie's story may be centuries old, but it speaks volumes. It's a reminder that progress wasn't handed down from heaven. It was clawed out of history by voices no one wanted to hear. Let's make sure we remember them. If this story made you feel something, sad, angry, or just grateful, hit that like button. Subscribe for more true stories they don't teach you in school. Because history isn't just kings and wars. It's women like Marjorie, forgotten but never unimportant.